Um, so today's topic is going to talk a little bit more about a controversial aspect of that prayer, and I want to just share with you a couple of different approaches that are taken to this in a way that, again, may be controversial, and it's just really meant to stimulate thought and not to offer any direct, opinions. And we'll see how it plays out. Okay, so the issue has to do with praying when someone is given an absolutely terminal diagnosis. And this is a heart-wrenching, difficult issue. Um, and I want to make sure we differentiate between, terminal diagnosis of someone who is, has some sort of disease, and what we're talking about is something different, which is someone is, in a hospital, in um, a really terminal state where doctors basically say, okay, this person is essentially on their deathbed, and they have no intervention that they are going to try to do. Right? There's a question: do you do nutrition, hydration, etc.? They're saying we're stopping to intervene. We're stopping to do any sort of intervention in this person's care. The question is, what is the role of prayer in such a context? Now, the default would be that of course we pray, right? Often what somebody will say is, listen, the doctors say, all right, it's out of my hands now, or it's in God's hands now. The only thing this person needs is prayers. Or you'll call the family and say, oh, how's such and such a person doing? And they say, well, he just really needs your prayers right now. The doctors have given up, really needs your prayers right now. So I wanted to share with you, starting off from a point which may be counterintuitive, and we're going to walk back from this. But starting from a point which may be counterintuitive, that may offer a little bit of a different perspective. And this is a little bit of a jarring approach, but we'll see, and again, hopefully glean some inspiration from this. And it starts from an approach that was promulgated from a couple of different sources, but really it comes from a Mishnah in Masechet Brachot. And we got to try and figure out what were we meant to learn from this Mishnah in Masechet Brachot. The Mishnah in Masechet Brachot says the following. Mishnah Brachot, and hopefully you'll see here, dear Posy, there we go. Mishnah Brachot, Perek Tet, Mishnah Gimel. Bana bayit chadash, you build a new house. Kana kelim chadashim, you buy new vessels or clothing actually. Omer Baruch Shechianu, this is the source of the famous bracha called Shechianu. And then there's a very powerful statement which we're familiar with, Mevarech al hara'a me'en hatova. That the same way you bless God for things that are difficult, you have a similar concept of blessing for good. Say similar concept of blessing God for things that are difficult. Right? So one who blesses for over the good, over the evil, as he blesses over the good is blessed over evil. Okay, it's a powerful thing. We'll talk about that at a different time. Now here's where it says the following: Hatzoek lishe'avar. If you cry out about something that has already passed, harezo tfilat shav. This is considered a prayer. Behold, this is a vain prayer. Now, you start right here and you say, one second. We cry about things in the past all the time, right? We're going to have Shabbat B'Tammuz for 3 weeks, Tisha B'Av, right? We always cry about the past. So this doesn't mean crying about the past. It means praying or making a request about the past. And so it says here, behold, this is a vain prayer. So the Mishnah needs to explain a little further. For example, Ketzad, Haita ishto me'uberet. Let's say a person's wife is pregnant. V'amar, and he says, Yehi ratzon, may it be his will, sheteled ishti zachar. That my wife will bear a male child or a female child, whatever it may be. Harezot tfilat shav. This is a vain prayer. Now, why is that the case? Because when did you know your wife is pregnant? Basically, probably after a few months in. But the point is, she's already pregnant, and the assumption is that scientifically, physiologically, so to speak, the gender is already completely decided. Nothing to do. It is what it is. And you to pray that so it's praying over the past, meaning that you're asking that something that is already clearly, so to speak, set in stone in the past change. That is a tefillat shav. That's what the Mishnah says. Or, for example, if he is coming home from a journey and he hears a cry of distress from the town, he's coming home and he sees smoke coming out, so to speak, from the town. And he says, Yehi Ratzon, he prays, maybe as well, it shouldn't be my house. That's also a vain prayer. Now, again, what's it trying to get at here? The simple understanding is it's a vain prayer because the cries of distress are already there. Whichever house is in trouble is already in trouble. Whichever house is burning is already burning. So for you to pray that the house that's burning is not yours, in the core, what you're praying for is for something that's already happened, right? A house is on fire and somehow it's a change from the house that was on fire being yours to have somebody else's house being on fire. That is asking for some sort of changing of the laws of reality. And therefore, such a prayer is a tefillat shav. That's why it's a tefillah l'shavar. You can't pray for the past to be changed. And in the past, one of the houses caught on fire. You can't pay for it to be changed and it not be your house. If it was your house, it is what it is. So that is it's a really interesting a Mishnah that it's worthwhile to analyze for a bit, right? Because it's saying three things. The first thing it's saying is you're not supposed to pray over the past. The second is you're not supposed to pray for the gender to be changed. And the third is you're not supposed to pray for the house that is burning to be somebody else's, for lack of a better, more adept way of saying it. Now, is the nature of what the Mishnah is teaching us could be analyzed in the following way, which is that we are only meant to pray for things that can be changed through natural means. Maybe that's what it's saying. And it's not able to use natural means to change the gender of a child, to somehow miraculously undo the damage to a house that's on fire and move it to a different house, right? That is asking God to change the natural way. And that somehow is called a tefillat shav, a vain prayer, for God to change the timeline and go and change the past. Now, you could say, 1 second, is that a vain prayer because you're thinking God can't do it? Or not? Is it no such thing in Jewish history of miracles, right? God stopped the sun in Givon from setting for Yehoshua to fight, right? The 10 plagues in Egypt, each one of them changed every law of reality that we've ever seen. So what's the Mishnah saying? Right? It's not like we've never prayed for, right? The 6-Day War, was, you could say was through supernatural means. Not that we don't. So some suggest that what we're saying is we don't discount the fact that God can do miracles. However, it's not right to pray or, so to speak, to demand that from God. That our prayers should be a hope that within the natural realm of the world in which God works, that all of those things should come together in our favor. So, for example, if you would say the whole Jewish world in 1967, right, they were praying, and short of absolute divine intervention, there is no way to understand the miracle victory of the 6-Day War. But according to this analysis, that's not a tefillat shav because it's not in the past. It hasn't happened yet. You're hoping that, and while the odds of something like that happening naturally may be very limited, very far-fetched, everything that happened within the 6-Day War happened within the natural order of things. And since that's the case, you are able to, make the argument that that's not a tefillat shav. What is a tefillat shav? Things that are already completely and totally set. For example, a person whose wife is pregnant and there's a baby inside, to have all of those, and it's interesting. This is a very forward-thinking notion of understanding of of gestation, human gestation. That those things like the gender are set, which I think we do know scientifically are set at a fairly early stage, right? That's the chromosomes X, Y, X, X, whatever it is. So the Mishnah is teaching us that we are not supposed to pray for that to change outside of the natural order. Not to think, so to speak, we don't think God can do it. Just what this Mishnah is teaching us, it's inappropriate to demand that of God, to pray for that to absolutely happen. But the approach that this Mishnah seems to be taking, at least on the surface level and the way that the Babylonian, the Talmud Bavli understands it, is that, yeah, sometimes it's not the right thing to do to pray for things that are already clearly set. Now, let's parallel that to our case, where, again, let's try and go the furthest, when somebody's on their deathbed and they're saying vidoy, etc. Maybe the argument could be made, according to this Mishnah and this approach, that after a certain point, where all medical interventions and all these things have gone to the furthest extent, and this, this person's disease has progressed so far that they're really literally breathing their last breaths. So it's inappropriate to daven that everything turn around, similar to the fact that it's already gotten to that stage where this is, like the pregnant wife or the burning house. And so actually, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach suggested, and he based this on Rabbi Eger, and I don't have the text here, but he suggested that at that point, you shouldn't pray. You shouldn't pray. And again, we'll refine that a little bit later, as we go through. It's not as simple as I'm making it sound right now. Because you shouldn't pray. You shouldn't pray for that kind of miracle, just like you shouldn't pray for the gender to change in a pregnant woman or the fire to change in a burning town. It's tefillah l'she'avar. It's gotten to that point where it's actually asking to God to change the methods of the world, where somebody breathing their last breath is not going to totally change in a different direction. And that is the position Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach presents initially, and he bases it on Rabbi Eger. And he adds an interesting additional point, which is, again, theologically very, very challenging. Challenging meaning that it challenges our thinking to try and understand exactly what it's saying. He says that you got to think about the way most people understand prayer. The way most people understand prayer is that they understand it as a quid pro quo. You pray this, I pray, instead of putting a nickel in a soda machine and getting, or a quarter, or now 20, more, a dollar bill in a soda machine and getting a soda, we put prayer into the box and God gives us back what we want. And he says that is a problematic, simplistic understanding of prayer one way or the other. But when you pray for someone who's in the middle of their last breath to completely and totally recover, the reality is, and we have to be sanguine to that reality, is that recovery may be something that won't happen. And then what's that going to do to the faith of all those people who you've galvanized to go pray? So he recommends against a big Tehillim gatherings, etc., for someone who is in that stage of absolute terminal illness. Now, he does put the following, what I call histaigut, right? He puts the following disclaimer, which is not saying not to pray. He's saying, what is it that is the context or the text or the specific explicit ask of your prayer? He suggests that the ask of your prayer should not be that this person be completely healed, because that's going to the point of praying for a nace, praying for a miracle beyond the capacity of the normal way in which God works. And he says that's an inappropriate prayer based on this passage in the Talmud, the passage in the Mishnah. However, he says you can pray for the pain to be reduced. You can pray for the nechama for the family. You can pray for the difficulty that goes, along with these heart-wrenching circumstances, to be that the family have resilience, or the people have resilience to be able to deal with this incredibly difficult time. Those are appropriate prayers. Just you shouldn't daven for a complete recovery. That is the first approach Shlomo Zalman suggests. The Rishumei Aaron, which is Rabbi Aaron Felder, rabbi in Philadelphia, quotes from his teacher. I don't think we have this in writing, but he quotes from his teacher of Moshe Feinstein, the very common practice of the name changing or a chola. The very common thing that when someone is ill, we have a practice to change their name. And if you just give me a second, I'm going to try, maybe when we pause for questions, I'm going to try and pull up the text of the changing of the name, and we'll go through it. But his suggestion, based on his tradition from Moshe Feinstein, was, yes, this is an appropriate practice, and the changing of the name is a very valuable and important thing. However, it should not be done for someone at that advanced stage of, the Malach HaMavis is in the room, so to speak. And for similar reasons, he thinks it's counterproductive. He thinks it'll detract from people's emunah. And he says that it may be an issue of tefillat shav. The idea of changing a name, and we'll look at it in a second, is to exactly that, to pray for something that is beyond the realm of what actually is meant to be in the methods in which God works, and therefore he suggests that this is not the appropriate thing to change their name once things have gotten so bad. So I'm going to pause for questions, because this is a jarring approach, and we're going to see opposing approaches. Don't worry, but we're going to try and tease out exactly what we're meant to learn, and hopefully again be inspired for that. So I'm going to turn off my video here for a second to try and get that source. But I know that Suzanne has a question. I think you can unmute yourself. See if it works.
Not.
Oh, there we go. Okay, go ahead.
I mean, basically, when you're praying for someone who's very, 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 very ill and dying, you want a personalness, a personal miracle.
Mm-hmm.
So what makes you deserving the miracle, or what would that change for the world? The world has a certain order, right?
Right.
It's a kind of self-importance. I mean, there were such luminaries which were tortured and died all through the history, and they didn't have a nest, right? So number one. Number two, when I pray for someone who I know is dying, I'm praying basically to make his death easy.
Mm-hmm.
And isn't that, I mean, any logical person would basically do that. Because the rest is just blind faith in some miracle.
Mm-hmm. And so you're saying that you agree with this approach, that prayer for a recovery at the point where somebody is.
What to do is really, when I do that, for some people who are very, very sick, that's what in the back of my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So am I supposed not to do that anymore? That's a question.
Yeah. I'm just trying to find this text here. No, it's a good question, and that's exactly what these are grappling with. And based on this Mishnah, the suggestion is that that maybe it's not so simple to pray, and it's to pray for the desire for the person to feel less pain, etc. But exactly like you're suggesting, that maybe it's not appropriate to pray for that complete and total recovery. Yes, okay.
What about the change of name? It's the same thing, but why is that positive?
Well, exactly. Moshe Feinstein is suggesting it shouldn't be done. He simply says that the change of name can and is relevant when that we haven't gotten to that stage. When a person is ill and they've gotten to a difficult stage, but there's still that turnaround capacity. What we're suggesting here is the beginning and end of our discussion is when the issue, when the illness has progressed so far. Earlier on, the concept of praying for ill people and nobody's suggesting that we strike that from our lexicon. Here, just describing in the limited scenario where the illness or the difficulty has progressed to that degree. All right, I'm just trying to find here the text because it's a really interesting one. Just give me just another minute. Let's see. All right, I'm going to try and find it for you. I'll see if I can, because to analyze what it actually says is a really interesting thing. But okay, so that's the approach that Rosh Shlomo Zalman Auerbach takes, and it sounds like some of the points that Suzanne is making, fit along with that. Let's see if we still have it in here. Okay. What is interesting is that this actually was very controversial because there was a totally different perspective. Totally different perspective. We're going to go a little bit out of order here. Let's see if this works. The story of Chizkiyahu. What's the story of Chizkiyahu? So I'm going to read you Tfilat Chizkiyahu. It's from a mix of the Talmud, but also it comes from the Tanakh. The story of Chizkiyahu HaMelech. Okay. There was a time during those days. Chizkiyahu Lamut. He died. He was ill to the point of death. And Ishayahu, so he was very ill, and the Navi came to him. Make your final arrangements because you're going to pass away from this illness. You're not going to live. Again, we had a different year once analyzing that pasuk. It says in the Gemara, what exactly does this mean? It's saying, you're going to pass away from your illness, you're losing your world to come. Chizkiyahu HaMelech said, what's so bad that I did? Because you decided proactively not to have children. Chizkiyahu said, you know why I did that? I saw in Ruach HaKodesh that if I had children, they would follow the wrong path. Says Chizkiyahu, it says that Isaiah the prophet, how dare you decide not to build a family because you think that God has decreed that your family isn't going to be good? What are you playing around in God's business? Means in God's cheshbon, in God's dealings. You have any role in that? You were command puruvur milor aretz, right? Have a family. And whatever happens in God will do. So he says, maybe now get me married and I'll have a kid. Sorry, it's too late. And this is what we're going to focus on. Chizkiyahu says, don't tell me it's too late. Afilu cherev chada munachat al tzavaro shel adam al yimna atzmo min harachamim. Even if a sword, a sharp sword, is placed on someone's neck, al yimna atzmo min harachamim. He should not despair from God's mercy. And Rashi explains there, Pirish Rashi Sham, Mekublani mi beit avi abba. What does he mean? I have this tradition. Chizkiyahu says, I have this tradition from my fathers in my father's house. Who does that refer to? David HaMelech. Shera'at HaMalach b'charbo shlufa b'yado b'sof Sefer Shmuel. The story in the end of Sefer Shmuel. V'lo manat v'lo min harachamim. That no matter how bad things look, eternal optimism. That's the approach that Chizkiyahu says. Chizkiyahu says, don't tell me, Yeshayahu Navi, too late. God already decreed, it's done. There's no such thing as it's done. Even if you have a sharp sword laying on your neck, Al yimna atzmo min harachamim. You should never despair, never pull yourself back from having positive hope. Now, this leads to an approach that disagrees with everything we've said up until now, and what's generally it's often associated with the approach of the Stipler Gaon, of Kanevsky, Rabbi Kanevsky, who takes a little bit of a different approach. Just as a side point, there was once someone who was I heard that had a different interpretation of this phrase, and again I'll repeat it. It says, "Afilu cherev chadam munachat al tzavaro shel adam al yimna atzmo min harachamim." Even if there's a sharp sword that is placed on your neck, you shouldn't pull yourself back from rachamim, from a mercy. The assumption is it's referring to God's mercy. God maybe will have mercy on you and you'll get better. But there was somebody who was Nebuch, who was in a terrible accident, and they were being taken to the hospital, and their chances of survival were very, very limited. And during the time they were taken to the hospital, they were starting to make phone calls to help Tomchei Shabbos in their town. And somebody says, "What do you mean? You know, you're so ill and you're helping Tomchei Shabbos?" And they said, "Even if there's a sword, alim atzmo min harachamim, I should still be a compassionate person, and therefore help Tomchei Shabbos even when I'm so ill." It's a different reading of that verse, of that statement from Chazal. But the Stipler Gaon, and we'll see here, the book Told Us Yaakov says this is proving everything we've said up until now wrong. What we've said up until now is incorrect, because basically this is an approach of saying never give up hope, and therefore always pray. Always pray. So listen to the Yerushalmi on that Mishnah we saw. The Yerushalmi says on that Mishnah, well, we said, even if your wife is pregnant, it may be God's will that my wife bear a male child. This is a vain prayer, right? That's what it says here. Right? If his wife is pregnant and he says, may his will Allah bear a child, it's a vain prayer. So look here in the Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi says, Yehi Ratzon, right? That you pray that God say that you should, have a different gender child, or you hear screaming in the city and you say Yehi Ratzon shouldn't be in my house. Tfilat Shav says Hatzod l'Shavar the Beis Yanai Rabbi Yosheves al Mashpechi Masnisa Hakodim l'Chein Yatzli. Yerushalmi says this is only basically once the baby's already coming out. But and Rabbi Yehuda ben Posy says Ava Yoshevet al Matri Yachol Ishtanor al Shem Hinika Chomer B'Yada Yotzer. So the Yerushalmi is saying that it's never considered until the baby's already coming out, and even as the baby's coming out, according to Rabbi Yehuda ben Posy, you can still pray. What's the suggestion? I don't think it's arguing. The Yerushalmi is not arguing with the science here. Yerushalmi, I think, is saying the following. What's the difference? Leave ultrasound before they had ultrasound. What's the difference between something happening while the baby's in the mother's womb and after baby coming out? The difference is whether you can see. And so what the Yerushalmi is suggesting is, even though scientifically we know that all the way from the time of the chromosomes, you are what you are in terms of the chromosomal gender. However, until you see it, you don't know what that is. So you can pray for God to change it. You're not supposed to pray for God to make a miracle where I'm looking at something black and I say, I want to magically, so to speak, miraculously have this turn to white. That is not something that is appropriate. However, since you can pray for a miracle that God should change something that you don't know about yet, or that you don't see. And so what the Yerushalmi is taking a little bit of a middle position, which is saying you can totally pray for miracles as long as you're not praying for a miracle that will ostensibly, in front of everybody's eyes, change the laws of reality. So the prayer for the gender of a baby while the baby is still inside, that is not considered a vain prayer, because God can change it and nobody would know that it got changed. No one would be the wiser, so to speak. And therefore, that is still not considered l'shavar. It could still change even through great, great miracles. So the Tolos Yaakov, the Zeitler Gaon, says that that's actually what's in the case here. How dare we not pray? So this is the text from the book called Tolos Yaakov, which is a biography of the process, the thought processes and the explanations that Rav Kanievsky would say. V'kachaya omer, and this is what he would say: when we pray for someone who is very, very ill, that through natural means there is not seeming to be any chance for their healing. And we're worried that maybe people might fear that their prayers are not useful. It says it's a mistake. Again, everything we've said up until now is a mistake. Number one, even if there was already a decree from God, there's value in your prayer. Lakel Yisurav, to make the person, this is I think similar to what Susanna was saying, have fewer Yisurim, have fewer pangs of pain, and have an easier time. Second approach, maybe it will extend the person's life and he'll have a little bit more and he'll be able to hold on a little bit longer. We have no ability to, assign value to any moment of anybody's life. There's the third, right? This is what we just said. How dare you ever give up hope? And here's where I want to say, and we have found many places where people have gotten healed with great chasdei shamayim. And then the last point, we're going to go back to this in a second. Last point, the fourth is maybe these prayers don't work for the person not surviving their illness, but they do. It adds more merit to that person. Right? He causes a lot of Jews and people to pray for him, etc. And the process of prayer is there. But I want to go to the third approach. The third approach, he says, maybe there's a different status of medicine. Right? In the cases we're talking about, where it's considered a tfilat shav, a vain prayer about the gender of a baby, or about the fire in the city, right? And we say that's tfilah l'shavar, that's chain. However, there is so much we don't know about medical science, right? We just look at COVID now. Every week we're learning, and so much of what we do and don't do is because we don't know. We don't understand this virus. We don't have a cure. We don't know. So maybe there, and I was talking to a physician who was, was involved in oncology, and he said, just look at cancer treatments over the last 50 years, right? Routinely, people would die from this, that, or the other cancer that you just gave up hope because we just didn't know. We didn't know what to do. And then over the years, as medical science has progressed, what we could do now is worlds different than we could do 50 years ago. And Bezrat Hashem, we should be able to do more. And people are racing for cures for all sorts of illnesses. So he says that maybe that's what he's saying. How many times have we heard doctors saying, well, you know what, we give up hope? And then somehow the person fights back and we thought they were so far gone, and it turns out that they weren't so far gone. And that's what he says. You shouldn't, give up hope for having there be some sort of mercy from Hashem, that things can change. Miracles are known to happen. People who are involved in patient care often tell you, "Oh, so I don't know how this happened. We don't know." But the person was beyond what I thought they could help, and turns out that they turned things around. So he says, because of that, there's never approach he says it's never too long to pray. And that's what he quotes. Now, interestingly, he suggests that the concept of prayer is always appropriate, and we should always pray. And part of what he's saying is we're praying, but we don't know what good our prayer does. We pray for X, but maybe the prayer helps for Y, right? And the core of the Jewish ethos is that we see God as involved in our lives, and therefore we pray when someone is ill. The Sefer HaChinuch actually has a very interesting distinction that kind of pulls these things together, which is, what does it say here? It says, and I'll just bring back this text here. The text says, Afilu cherev chada munacha al tzavaro shel adam. Right? The idea is that you're up against the wall, so to speak. There is a sword pressed against your throat, and so it really looks like all is gone. But is it possible that the sword could then move away and you'll be fine? Yeah, it is. However, what it does not say is, Afilu cherev chada munachat betoch tzavaro shel adam. Right? Let's say the person's head has already been chopped off. Right? That the person is already is that a time that you should pray for the person's healing? Or the head is, the knife is already pierced him. Is that a time you should pray for the person's healing? So even Rosh Zalman Auerbach was perhaps saying that that's the kind of case we're talking about, where there's a person that they've already been stabbed through the heart, so to speak, and they're at that last breath. That's not something that is that's already nigzer azera. That's already too long. So there is both a practical and a philosophical debate here. But Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach's approach is to say, be careful. Maybe don't always pray for things that you think are too far of a miraculous way. And Rav Kanievsky is saying, no. Who we are is we are prayers, meaning those who pray. We are, right? We are prayers. The Jewish people are a praying people. And the nature of who we are is to pray exactly because we are firm believers in God's help and role in this world and God's influence on things happening in this world. And we pray that there should be, steady-handed doctors and, and prescient medical researchers and people who are involved in all of these processes to have success in what we call siyata dishmaya. So it could be that there isn't actually such a far gulf between these two approaches. It's just a question of sort of where you draw the line. How sick does a person have to be, for you to say maybe it's inappropriate to pray for their healing? And that's kind of the point Suzanne was making earlier. But the undercurrent, and maybe Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach would agree to this approach to say that, anything less than charbo, the sword within, already stabbed the person, so to speak, in the analogy that was given in the Mishnah, things that are miraculous, but they somehow still go through the laws of nature are an appropriate thing to pray for. By the way, you could also be praying for a disease that the person have, which is currently seen as uncurable. You could be praying for there to be a cure discovered, right? That's a lot of the prayers for COVID are, that the people who are working feverishly to find a cure and to find a vaccine should be successful in their efforts. So in that regard, you have sort of this approach that threads that needle. But I would say that you see here two interesting points. The first, I think, is the inspiration of that eternal hope and eternal optimism and the approach that Rav Kanievsky is suggesting, which is to go to the nth degree, all the way up to the point of charbo, that the sword is right within you, that should be of prayer. And the power of prayer and the importance of prayer and the need for prayer and the idea that faith underlies what we really truly think God controls the world. I think that's a very powerful and inspiring idea. But the second point is actually the suggestion that started this, what we thought, sounds a little bit like a counterintuitive approach, which was the approach that suggested, by Rosh Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, about telling people when not to pray, and the Tfilat Shav, this idea of, praying for somebody who is, already in danger to somehow that danger never to have happened, which is because we also think about the psyche of those doing the praying. And we've got to think also about the bigger picture and all the different people who are affected. And therefore, our prayers should encompass them, and we should think about them when we direct whether or not or in what manner to pray. So it is absolutely an axiom that when you hear about someone's ill, and the question may be of a gradation, but definitely when you hear about anyone up to this point of this, the sword is already in their neck, then prayer is valued, appropriate, inherent. But you have to take what, again, Suzanne said it eloquently, of recognizing the broader context of all the other things for which to pray, including the family's resilience, etc., and the reduction of suffering that are also part of that prayer. And it's just a sort of a broader picture of realizing the expansive nature of prayer and all the different things prayer can encompass. I just want to end by saying that this is, once again, not a psak in any way. This is just showing some of the texts that deal with this issue. And we shall and will continue praying and hope that there's a refuah shlema to kol cholei amo Yisrael. And it's interesting that we say that, right? We say there should be a refuah shlema to everybody, and we don't say only the people who are this sick and not that sick. And we hope that it will be a refuah shlema. But the ideas that are, foundational to this discussion about our faith, our prayer, our care for each other and the psyche and how that impacts people, is also, I think, makes this a nuanced and multi-layered discussion that, again, is not lamaaseh, not changing what we do per se, but definitely changing enlightening us how we think and hopefully inspiring us to realize what prayer can be, even in these terrible and difficult situations that seem, way that Rav Kanevsky was saying, seem hopeless. There's nothing hopeless. There's always going to be that sense of hope with that appropriate sense of reality in which the prayer is informed. All right, so we're going to stop here. I know, Suzanne, I think you're unmuted and you can talk, and happy if everyone else wants to unmute and share their questions. Go ahead, Suzanne.
I can show you a case where the prayer for a change of sex helped. A American Chinese medical technologist in our lab expected the first child, a girl. Now, I think males are very important in Chinese families too. But he prepared everything pink, and it was nice and good. And a boy came out because all the ultrasounds never showed the important case.
Okay. There you go. There you go. Well, there is the story of Yaakov Avinu, right? We actually talked about this in a different class, the Yaakov Avinu, and the story of Dinah being the daughter of Leah, moved miraculously from Rachel, etc. And that's a instance of exactly this issue of, will you pray for that? Should you not pray for that, etc. So it's a complicated question which we've only scratched the surface of, but it's an interesting thing to think about in this context of Tefillah. All right, Miriam, yes, go ahead.
Yes, I lost all the pictures, but that's okay because I can hear my picture, your picture, all of them are lost. But this is my question.
We hear you. Can you hear us?
I can hear you, but I see no pictures. It's okay. My question is this. You did allude to changing name, but you did not explain that. And this is how may I just say how I remember it. One changes the name of the patient, of the person who is ill, when they are very ill, and you do not want the Malach HaMavet to come to them and recognize them. So you change their name and you keep the Malach HaMavet, the angel of death, you keep the angel of death away that way. My question is, what is the procedure for changing a name? And secondly, do they still do that today?
This is still done today, and actually I'm going to, that's what I was trying to pull up. There is, and I'll see if maybe afterwards I can share. There's actually a text. There's a ceremony for changing the name where we talk about this is what the person was, and this is the person, I'm just going to try and see. I had it, and maybe it's down here.
It's
Well,
usually
just tell us your feeling on it, Rabbi.
But yes, that's exactly what you're talking. I mean, it is something still done today. It's done basically. The idea was that it's meant to be a catalyst for prayer, and in the context of prayer, and this idea of a name change. Usually, it's a name like Chaim is added or Chaya, something to do with life or blessing. Yeah, Raphael. Sometimes, um, uh, because the idea is that the Gzeir was on this person, the decree was on that person, and now it's somebody else. Again, this is meant to be a catalyst towards prayer. And again, I'm just trying to find the text because I had it here and now I don't see it. But there's actually a huge literature on exactly how it works and what it's supposed to be. But the idea of changing the nature of the Gzeirah and Shemayim on this person as part of our tefillot for their recovery.
זה משנה מקום, משנה מזל, משנה שם, משנה מזל?
Again, it's more complicated than that, but the idea is that the Gzeirah was here, and now we're saying somebody else that the Gzeirah should be different.
Thank you.